Seltzer Kings
podcasts.
What does an 18-year veteran of the tech industry and a 20-year veteran of the military have in common? More than you might think. Welcome, everyone, to the Second Act podcast, leveling up your life's journey.
You can't stop me. You don't got the power. Shut me down. That's not an option. I'm my biggest problem. You don't got the power. Shut me down. That's not an option. You can't stop me.
Michael, welcome back to the Second Act with you and I. How are you doing,
Here
sir?
we are. Good. We're back again with this very exciting special episode today that we'll get into in just a second. But I was thinking about, I can't believe, John, how we've done tens of episodes. Now we're 40-something and counting, which is incredible. And I was thinking about, what do I appreciate the most about this whole process? And it's getting the perspectives of such a diverse group of people and the journeys that they've been on and the things that they've shared and how much sort of common ground there is from people who come from all different walks of life. Like, they've just lived such different lives. But we've found like these common elements about community and perseverance and grit and perspective and faith. And it's just been, when we talked about this at the very beginning, one of the things that was important to me was to be able to memorialize some of my thoughts and your thoughts and our thoughts together and other people's stories in a way that one day, hopefully, my son will be able to listen to and be like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't know my dad sort of thought about life that way, or some people he had on the show, that's the way they think about life, or where that person thinks about life. And I hadn't thought about that. So I just think that's sort of a really special element of what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And, I'm on the road right now and spent 9 hours with my kids 2 days ago. And so I subjected them to a couple of our episodes just to listen to them again and learn some stuff that I probably didn't pick up the first time we recorded. And my boys, I was fascinated after the episode. They would go, "Dad, that was a really good episode. I really learned some stuff." And they're 8 and 12. So, I know we went international a couple months ago, and then, we are growing our episodes as well. But now I can say that we can reach down to 8 and 12-year-olds, even if they're my sons and I subjected them to listening to us in the car. So it's fun, man. It is exciting. And I'm really excited about this episode and the partnership that we have going. And why don't you explain to everybody what that is?
Yeah, so we're very proud to be working with Hire Heroes USA on a partnership. Last winter, we held a fundraiser to help raise money and awareness for this organization, John, that you've been through yourself, but have also helped support through this process. And they're doing some incredible things to help folks, military veterans and their spouses, find employment after they've left the military. And it's a very sort of unique transition compared to someone who's spent their whole life in the private sector, the civilian sector, jumping from job to job, either inside a company or, into other companies. And they're doing an outstanding job doing that. They're working with Congress. They're working with large donors to help continue bringing employment to folks who are, who have given service to the country and now are looking to find employment outside of that. And today we have a very special guest who has also been through that process.
Yeah, today we welcome Samantha Bell, who is a United States Navy veteran and recipient of the Woman Veteran of the Year Award, recognized by Hire Heroes USA for exemplary strength and dedication in her professional and personal life. Serving as an interior communications electrician in Pearl Harbor from 2013 to 2016, Samantha earned several commendations for her outstanding service. After her military career, she pursued a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, focusing on child and adolescent development. Today, she is a clinical instructor in ABA therapy at the Birchtree Center, where she is passionate about helping children reach their full potential.
That's awesome.
A military spouse, mother of 2, and a 2-time cancer survivor, Samantha is committed to inspiring and uplifting others through her resilience and positive spirit. Ma'am, welcome to the show, Samantha.
Welcome, Samantha.
Hi. Thank you.
That is impressive. All around impressive.
Yeah, no kidding.
Woman Veteran of the Year, your time in the Navy. Man, 2-time cancer survivor. There's a lot to dive in here and talk about.
Yeah, it's quite a conversation starter at times. I get a lot of questions when, what have you done? What do you do with your life?
Yeah. Well, tell us, just for a background, tell us a little bit about your childhood, early career, where you started and what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, I'm from a small 1 traffic light town in Pennsylvania. I didn't have the best upbringing. It was drug addiction, a lot of mental health issues, and I kind of had a path paved for me before I was even born, And, it's
Sure.
something that a lot of people feel that way, and I know that. But yeah, so my mom was disabled. My biological father was not in the picture, and my stepfather worked day and night to provide for us as best as he could. And with that comes stress and difficulties connecting on a parental level. So a lot of my needs were pushed to the wayside, same with my sister. And it just kind of felt like we were stuck where we were brought up.
So, I mean, you touched on something really important. We don't choose where we're born, who our parents are, what the sort of economic conditions are that we're born into. And it's a very challenging road for some early in their life. And, I'm sorry you had to endure some of that growing up, but you made an informed decision, I think, at some point to not sort of keep yourself in those circumstances, and you found an outlet joining the Navy. So tell us about what led up to that decision and then why the Navy and some of the cool things you were doing there.
I tried to better myself. I graduated from high school. I went to college, and it was not everything it was cracked up to be for me. I went from a very overly sheltered life, and I was set free. And every sheltered kid's going to tell you I went wild, and that's definitely true for me. I had some health scares while I was in college, and coupled with toxic coping mechanisms that I am not proud of to this day. It took a really hard fall for me to step back and look at my life and say, hey, I don't want to walk on the path that's kind of prescribed to me from the second I was born. I don't want that life for myself. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to have kids, but if I did, I certainly didn't want them to feel stuck as well. So it was taking that first step into breaking that mold. So I saw a problem and I sought a solution, and that was walking into a recruiter's office one day and saying, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to go.
Samantha, I heard a quote one time, and it was along the lines of, once you hit a certain age, you can't keep blaming your parents. You have to take the responsibility that you've, walked into and that you've created for yourself, and the situation you created for yourself. And, the dichotomy that you have of being raised the way you were with the difficulties that you embraced, but then you walked away and you seemed to create a different path for yourself is so incredible that you were able to do that, because we all know of stories where people aren't able to do that or don't succeed. And I mean, I'm looking at you now and reading off your bio, you definitely thrived by just taking that initial step to take action, take those first few steps and just start going. So one, I want to commend you on that.
Thank you.
And I want to learn more about what, those first few years, going into the Navy, what that was like for you and the adjustments you had to face. And yeah, can you kind of unpack that for us?
Of course. I first want to preface this with I was a woman joining a male-dominated occupation. And I will say it until I am blue in the face. My story is not unique. I just happen to have a voice, and I just so happen to be heard. And I am going to use my voice and the strength that I have gained through all of the trials that I've been through to hopefully make a difference for just at least one person. So with that said, my story is very similar to most people's. Boot camp was boot camp. It was great. I learned a lot about myself through that process. Going through the schooling, it was, I was at the top of my class, learning different types of electrical doodads, and going to the fleet. I had almost whiplash going from school to the fleet immediately and on to deployment. I had, I think, 3 days from the time I arrived at my ship until I went on my first deployment. So I didn't have an opportunity to get my feet wet. I didn't have the chance to make friends or connections or really feel comfortable in a place that was my home. And with that, I don't think anybody had the chance to get to know me. And I think that greatly affected the trajectory of my military career from then on. Going from a college student with all of these friends to the military, where you go to boot camp and you get such camaraderie because you are going through something so difficult, and out to the rest of your life, you're set free. And to do that in a completely foreign environment, it's a shock to the system, to say the least. So I was seeking out those connections. I was trying to make friends, and it fell short. I was alone.
Wow. Is it the way that the process works that it makes it difficult to build those connections, or is it finding the right mentor and you just didn't happen to stumble across that person in your experience? What would you attribute that loneliness to while serving and even receiving some of these commendations during your service?
So what I had walked into was, like I said, male dominated. This rang true in my division. I was the only enlisted woman in my division. Okay. My chief and my divisional officer were both women, but they didn't have a hand in the day-to-day. They had their own offices, their own thing going on. So I was stuck with testosterone-filled work center, and not kind things were said and done behind my back, and it set the tone and that happened immediately. So it set the tone for my years on the ship, and unfortunately, that had followed me. I wasn't given a chance to exist in that kind of environment. Hey. And I think that's why I was so lonely. Any of the friends that I had made were not directly involved with me. Actually, to this day, I only have one friend from my service. She is my best friend. But it's kind of jarring to say that even to this day, because I met so many wonderful people, and they had such profound impacts on my life, both good and bad. But here I am, only really having one good memory of that. So,
wow. Samantha, it's interesting when you talk about your military experience, because a lot of people look from the outside, look in and think, oh, what a tight community, what a great group of individuals who are all working together. But your story rings true, and I've seen it time in and time out of, for me, Marines that come from a small town that, don't fit in, or there's something there, there's a clash, and all of a sudden you get put in this environment, smaller environment, like a ship, like a, deployment, like some off-base post. And sometimes those issues are exploited. Sometimes, the differences in all of us aren't always turned into great stories of camaraderie. And so what it comes down to is persistence in the individual. And that's what I think you're exuding, is persistence to be in that environment where it's male dominated. So you're already an outsider. Just like when we talked to Mace Curran, the first female Thunderbirds pilot, her story is very similar. Male dominated, pilot squadron. And you had to overcome a lot of those differences. But what makes you special and what makes you so significant is your ability to be on ship for months on end, years on end, and be in that environment and overcome the obstacles that were put before you, overcome the obstacles that you're experiencing day to day in and out of the workplace. And oh, by the way, you can't leave. You are still on ship, and you just go to your rack, and you're still involved in those dynamics. So
yes,
what I get from you is your just innate sense to pursue something better, to endure, and to have determination. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
And some of the genesis, John, for my question was based on that conversation with Michelle Kerr and Mace. And she said, at some point she was able to find herself in and amongst sort of the right small group of people that really gave her the confidence boost and helped accelerate her career in the military. And then I think some of the things she's doing post-military. But she had served, I think, longer than you, Samantha. So maybe there's a time element in finding that right community, which is encouraging for the women who are serving today. And hopefully the military is making some changes to create an ecosystem for everybody to have that equal opportunity. Because being an underrepresented or disadvantaged group, it's probably at times you have fear, anger, annoyance, and that feeling of being lost. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. There was some light in it. I don't want to paint it to be this very dark picture. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about community from that experience. So it doesn't go without some light.
Yeah. Sure. And you came away with it with your best friend to this day, which
absolutely.
is awesome.
So I want to continue in that vein of perseverance, because you have a career in the Navy that you then exit, as everyone eventually has to do, and you decide to go get your degree in psychology. So tell me about one of the hardest things that I think military members have to do is transition out of the military, and that may be where you got introduced to Higher Heroes. That may be a little bit later on down in your transition, but talk to me about leaving the Navy and what that was like, and how you found or made the decision that you made to go back to school.
Yeah, my exit from the Navy was not a chosen path for myself. When I made my mind up to join, I wanted to retire from the military. I was very set on that. Circumstances happened to me and around me, and unfortunately, it would have been more of a burden for me to stay in, and it would have ultimately damaged my mental health and my physical health for me to stay in. So leaving while it was pushed upon me, it set me up really for success in the end. In fact, the exit from the military has had such a profound effect on who I am today. And it wasn't from a good conversation. It was a painful one. And I remember verbatim what was said to me to this day, and I'll spare you the not so kind words, but it painted anybody that's in a leadership position in a bad light for me. And it made me very fearful of trying to go back to work, because I did not trust that the people who are supposed to be leading you, mentoring you, and uplifting you, I didn't think that they really had my best interest at heart anymore. It was about getting to their next milestone themselves. And I took my focus and I put it all into my family. I knew eventually I would gain the gumption to go back to work, but at that point in time, in 2016, I was not ready. It hurt me a lot to think about all of the missed opportunities. I felt like something was taken away from me. And in some ways it was, but I was able to stay at home. In 2016, I had welcomed my first child, my son. I was afforded the opportunity to stay at home with him. You know, my husband was active duty himself. He was on submarines, and we made it work. I went back to school while I was home with my son, while my husband was on deployment, and I kept setting goals for myself, small, attainable goals, because if I didn't do that, I would have fallen into this very deep hole of despair.
I mean, John and I talk about 1% better every day, and I love that you talk about just setting small, achievable goals, because I think those building blocks help people, all people at any given time, get through really challenging things when you can sort of break it down to these small bits and blocks and check that off. And then, you know, over time, that has a tendency to lead to usually good outcomes if you're putting in the effort. And so is Hire Heroes involved at this point to help you think about and navigate your transition out of the military and into the civilian sector, or not yet?
Not yet, actually.
Okay.
I was a do-it-myselfer, so I thought, you know, this is fine. I'll be able to do this. It's straightforward, right? You go back to college, you graduate, you get a job. That's how it goes. So, I mean, I'll skip around a little bit. 2016, I had my son. I went to school. I had my daughter I had him in 2017. Don't tell him, I forgot which year he was born. And then my daughter, I had her in 2018. And I continued to work on my degree all through that. I never took a break. And I finally graduated in 2020 at the peak of COVID. You know, we were supposed to be getting ready to transition out of the military. It was going to be a fun time in our lives. We had just purchased our first home in Tennessee. At the time, I was living with my in-laws because we were transitioning. And I had moved my children, myself, and my animals down to Tennessee. And 2 months after we had moved in, I was diagnosed with cancer. And that's kind of when this spiral had really began for us.
Can you talk about what that diagnosis does to you and to your family, and how does that shape your day-to-day actions?
So our circumstances were unique in that I was in a new place with nobody around me that I had really known, dealing with a fight to survive. And this all came about because I had a cough. You know, I never would have known. And that's kind of the catalyst for my husband exiting the military. You know, our entire 5-year plan crumbled and was digested by the center of the earth in an instant. And what do you do with that? Where do you go from there? It was literally every day we had to take one step towards our goal of survival as a family, literally and figuratively. And we did everything we had to do to make it work. He very abruptly, after, you know, graciously being given Hum's orders, he had been given 30 days because they were not going to extend him anymore. And this was while I was in my first round of chemo. I was still very, very sick. They gave him 30 days before we were losing our health insurance. our livelihood, everything. We just purchased our first home, all of these wonderful things, and it just all was tainted. So my husband scrambled, and we're very fortunate that we have made so many connections from the military and through family that he was able to sustain our way of life very quickly. The turnaround between him leaving and getting a new job was very quick. With all of that, it was detrimental to his mental and physical health, worrying about carrying an entire family's load worth of stress. It hurts you in ways that, honestly, I can't even fathom, because he shielded me from so much of that. Yeah.
It's so interesting, Samantha, to hear you share your perspective on that. You're the one going through physically this process of treating cancer and helping take care of the family, and you're worried about your husband and the impacts it's had on him, which speaks to your character, obviously. And now, is school on hold, or had you just finished school, the psychology degree, while this is happening?
So I had graduated in May of 2020, and we had moved into our new home in Tennessee in June. Our intention with moving down there and all of that was for me to get a job and start working towards building up experience so that I could pursue my master's in clinical mental health counseling pretty quickly. And he was going to transition out of the Navy and, work on his bachelor's degree then. It just, like I said, it really did just rip apart all of our plans.
Yeah.
I had to put everything on hold, and he ultimately had to put everything on hold as well. Yeah, 6 months in was whenever we had the devastating news of losing our insurance, losing his military career and all of that after 9.5 years for him. And just to find out a few months later that my cancer was coming back with a vengeance, we didn't have a chance to rest. We didn't have a chance to catch our breath, because it has been turmoil and anguish at every single turn. And somehow we're finding our way to the end of all of these very deep, dark tunnels just to find ourselves back in one again. But we're persevering. We're getting through them, and we're doing it. We're making it work. But this man worked on his, I like I said, I had relapsed immediately and very quickly started a new round of chemo and was preparing for a bone marrow transplant. I was months in the hospital, which was, let me tell you, it is not for the faint of heart getting a bone marrow transplant. It is very difficult on your body and your mental health. And I know what I went through, but I can't imagine what it's like for him to have sat back and watched the mother of his children and his life partner struggle to drink water or sit up, But he sat there. He worked remotely in the hospital next to me, wearing a mask for 8 hours a day, sleeping in a very uncomfortable hospital chair, still doing schoolwork. He continued his bachelor's degree. He did everything. He's going to be so upset with me for talking about him so much, but he was a pillar of strength for our entire family, for my children. He was so present when I couldn't be. And yeah, the months of that, he never missed a beat.
Samantha, I got to know, there's got to be some foundation in something, whether it be a faith or just a belief in your marriage. But you go through cancer for the second time. You've got 2 children to raise. Your husband just exited the military. You're in an unfamiliar place with very few friends. All you have is each other. and your kids. But what's getting you through all this?
If I can be totally honest with you, sometimes the love of your family is enough. If all else fails, love for your family is enough. And I did not want to settle. I've been a statistic in so many aspects of my life.
Yeah.
And there's been so many times that somebody else did the work to pave a way for me. And this was one opportunity for me to put a stop to it and say, I can fight it. I can do this because I want to and because I'm choosing to, because I refuse to be one more statistic in some website somewhere, in some textbook. I don't want that to be my life. And I don't want to be, that's my legacy. I'm another statistic in some sort of medical journal. And that's what my kids are going to remember. I died from cancer, I wasn't going to let it happen.
Wow. So love was the foundation. The family unit is, maybe one of the strongest I've ever heard of in my life. Incredible.
Yeah.
And then not being a statistic or not wanting to be a statistic was your motivation to push you through it. I'm sure on top of, wanting to be there in the future for your kids and your husband. So it's just an incredible story you've shared up to this point. Ups and downs. I can't even begin to imagine some of the things that you've had to endure, Samantha. But I do want to transition into this really cool space that you're in, and you've gotten yourself through the cancer. It's probably strengthened your family in ways that it's hard to imagine if you haven't gone through that, if someone has not gone through that themselves. And now you're out on the other side. Psychology focusing on child and adolescent development, and then Higher Heroes maybe coming into play. Talk us about both parts. One, why psychology and child and adolescent development? I can make some guesses just based on some of the stuff you shared, but I love the focus. It's incredible. And I'm stealing John's word. I think I've said incredible like 10 times already in this show, so I got to figure out a new word. But then also how Higher Heroes started to play a part in either you or your husband or both to help sort of lead where you are today.
Higher Heroes was suggested to me by my best friend. My best friend's name is also Samantha. Everybody thinks that it's hilarious. She suggested you guys, because she had used Higher Heroes. Sorry.
Yeah.
She was very adamant that if I had a question, they were going to have an answer or at least be able to point me in the right direction. And her explanation of what they provide did not do them justice. So I had reached out to Higher Heroes whenever I was at the end of my transplant saga. And, I'm in remission. I'm doing good. I'm on the up and up at this point. And I really just wanted something to look forward to. Like I said, small attainable goals, surviving, check, done. What's next? Because I'm a busybody and I got to keep myself going. So I want to move on to the rest of my life now. I'm done surviving. I'm doing that. Now let's thrive. You said it earlier. You used the word thrive, and that is 100% my catchphrase. I am no longer a survivor. I'm a thriver. So that's where I was going. I asked Higher Heroes for some help, and I was assigned to this wonderful transition specialist, Lauren, turned friend. She has been a valuable resource even since I had stopped needing that service. She did so much more work than what was probably in her job description. She took a very emotionally and mentally injured person and built up a confidence in me that I don't know how she worked the magic, but she did it. I am a true testament, a living, breathing testament of what she did. And
nice.
Yeah, I just don't even know where to begin with what Lauren did for me. She took all of my experience that I didn't think that I had any experience in the Navy, because I wasn't given opportunity to do things, but somehow she managed to find every morsel of goodness that I had during that time. And she created this beautiful resume for me. And she told me that I was worth it. And I think that after my exit and the manner in which I had left, I needed to hear that from someone. I needed someone to believe in me again.
Sure.
So in that shift from surviving to thriving, there must have been some scary thoughts going through your head. Like, okay, I want to thrive, but how do I thrive? So like what, and then along comes Hire Heroes, who plays another critical role. You have a critical partner through Lauren, another important figure in your life. What was the scariest thing going through your mind right before you met Lauren, and then how Lauren helps put those fears to bed and helped you sort of create smoother seas leading into what you're doing today?
My one largest intrusive thought that sometimes sneaks back into this day is, I'm not enough. I haven't done enough. I haven't proven myself enough. And that was told to me on multiple occasions throughout my military time. I was saying things in very demeaning ways about myself. I'm just a mom. I just have my bachelor's degree. I haven't done anything with it. I haven't done anything with my time. And she reminded me that, one, I'm a military spouse. I have done PCSing across the United States, from Hawaii to Connecticut. That and alone is that I could make a whole career out of that move. So I have demolished and remodeled with my own two hands an entire house while battling cancer. I laid tile. I've built porches. I've done everything you can imagine in a home. I am a great cook. I'm a homemaker. I am a mother. I am a wife. I am a friend. And I am so much more than just
absolutely
Samantha. And she really shined a light in all of those dark corners that I just kind of ignored.
That's awesome.
It's now becoming very evident why you were Woman Veteran of the Year for Hire Heroes. So, but I love that you allow that thought to open up into what you are and not what you aren't. And I meet people on almost a daily basis that have served, and they say, well, I just served 4 years, or I was just a Marine, or just a rifle, kind of like you were just explaining. And the things that you just listed out are not only true to you, but true to every one of those other service members who are living post a military career and doing well after their service. And that's why I love Hire Heroes, because they take somebody like you, like me, who encapsulate their career, whether that's 4 years or 20 years, into just a couple key words. And we think that we're a one-trick pony. We think that we can't do anything outside of that, what we did in the heyday of our lives. But they say, no, listen, this is what you actually are. And they take those real world examples and those real world pressure situations that we are in. And they say, listen, you survived multiple PCSs, multiple moves, you were deployed, or your spouse was deployed, and you did all these other things. You're a cancer survivor. And all of a sudden, you have this litany of things that now you realize you are so much more. And that's why I love Hire Heroes. And obviously, they had a great candidate in you. You just needed to put those things that you were into actual words that resonated with you. And so that partnership exists for that reason. And those specialists exist to take those negatives that we have or the limiting factors that we have out of us and replace them with strengths and open up the opportunities that we can now pursue.
That's one of the to your point, they didn't mold me. That's one really important thing that I feel like needs to be said about Hire Heroes. They didn't create anything for me. They allowed me to be the person that I always was and still am, and gave me an outlet to put it on paper and to show it and to kind of show it off to people that might just see me as just a mom or just a cancer survivor or, just these things. They gave me strength and courage. And I think that those are far more valuable than any other kind of lipstick, hair, and, they can make you look flashy, but I already was before.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever built a puzzle with someone, Samantha, but sometimes, especially larger puzzles with 500, 1,000 pieces, you can get stuck on a section.
Yeah.
And you get a fresh set of eyes that comes along who wants to help. And all of a sudden, they start piecing together a section that you just couldn't for the life of you figure out. And, within hours, you're almost done putting that puzzle together, and then eventually it gets completed together. And it's just the analogy that kind of popped into my head. Sometimes we don't see how the pieces come together, even though they're all there. You need someone to help sort of come along and help you do that.
Yes.
Samantha, we are coming to an end, and there's so much more to your story that I want to dive into, but I want to understand if you were going to advise somebody that was in your situation or a situation that's maybe not even close, but you just had a few minutes with that person. What would you provide as sound advice after going through all you've gone through? What would you like to pass along to them to help them in their journey?
Yeah. Your circumstances do not define you. It's your ambition and your drive and your willingness to accept nothing less than your goals and your efforts that you're willing to put into it, into attaining them. That's really what defines you. For so long, I was afraid to ask for help. I always had these things inside of me. And I think that's probably the biggest key is don't be afraid to ask for help, because that's one door that you can open to a whole new existence. Don't be afraid.
I love that. And I think it very much probably complements what you're doing with children and at the Birchtree Center and helping them reach their potential. Samantha, all of your life experiences, you now get to help others sort of in their journeys through your learnings. And I think it's a great piece of advice to leave our audience with today.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing that with us and sharing your outstanding, I almost said incredible again, your outstanding experience with Hire Heroes USA. And if anyone has heard your story and they really found a connection with one or more of the things that you've said and want to get in touch with you, is there a best way for them to do that?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn, really anywhere. Google my name. I'll pop up somewhere.
And I'm going to put a plug in there, Michael, for anybody that is a transitioning military member. They've got transition on the horizon, or they're a spouse of a transitioning member. Reach out to Hire Heroes, because they have, just as Samantha shared, they have transition specialists that are waiting to turn your story into a legacy. They're willing to take the things that you think are mediocre and make them extraordinary. Put that on paper and make you feel, just as Samantha explained, make you realize how much you truly have endured, how much you truly have accomplished and achieved, and how much potential you have after your service. And so they are waiting to take more people like Samantha, more people like me, and listen to our stories, listen to the things that we've gone through, and make us feel that we can thrive after the military and after our service. So, and we'll have the link to Hire Heroes as well as to find Samantha online. And man, from me to you, Samantha, and Michael, we are just so appreciative for you coming on, sharing your story. And again, it's obvious why Hire Heroes selected you for Veteran of the Year. You're so inspirational. And if you ever decide to become a public speaker, I know that you will thrive on stage as well. And you will make a difference in people's lives. So thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thanks, Samantha.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was an amazing discussion, John. I think we're good to say see ya to our audience.
Yeah. Yeah, Michael. I learned so much about persistence, and
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm awestruck at, again, how we got Samantha Bell to come on the show and talk to us and give us her story. But that's a wrap on another episode. So we will see you guys next week. Take care.
See ya.
The Second Act with Michael and John stars Michael Newborn and John Ballenger. The podcast is produced by Seltzer Kings. For more information on the show, check out michaelandjohn.com, or if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, give the guys a shout on their socials at The Second Act with Michael and John on most platforms. Thanks for listening.
Seltzer Kings
Podcasts.